Hi everyone! This month's Soul to Soul chat, I have the absolute pleasure to welcome Chelle Rose Boxley.
Hello.
I love that you're bringing your middle name into this now. So we're going to be talking about something really interesting that not many people I've seen talk about, and it excites me even though I'm not a mother, and it's the 4th trimester. So we'll come on to that in a bit, but just to give us some background about how I met Chelle. So Chelle used to run a lovely yoga studio called the SOUL2SOUL in Stourbridge, which will be sadly missed, but we're not going to harp on about that, are we? I know. So most of you that follow me regularly know that I was always told to avoid yoga, and that I went on this journey. And if you've seen the Soul to Soul chat with Sharon, which was last month, was retreat I ended up booking on following my intuition, and Sharon was the first person to ever show me yoga in a way that worked for me. And I came home to Stourbridge with lots of excitement that I was going to find a new community and that yoga was going to be for me. And there was some, lots of yoga places, lots of local offerings, but none of them really did what Sharon did on the retreat, which was to make yoga, teach it from its roots and make it inclusive, and less about the stretching, the physical and the asana, and more about a well-rounded, well-being, balanced, like spiritual. There's so many things yoga is, isn't there? Like, it's so deep. And I didn't find that. But having said that, I did still go to like a beautiful yin class regularly. It turns out I love yin yoga. My body loves yin yoga. Absolutely love it. But other than yin yoga, all the other yogas, so I did some kundalini meditation and things like that. But because they weren't the typical Western traditional yoga that we see regularly, fewer people went to these classes and they kept getting taken off the timetable. Now, I understand that, okay? I understand you can't keep making a loss on classes, so this isn't a criticism of that. But all that left me with was, I find a class, I'd love it, and after about 6 weeks it would disappear. So I started to get a little bit disillusioned locally, and a little bit, I suppose, felt a little bit sad that I'd got excited that I might have a new community, and then all of a sudden that wasn't how it was happening. Then I heard rumours of a new studio opening locally, and what was really exciting was that I could walk to it from my house. I mean, what a lifestyle is that, being able to walk to your local yoga studio? That in itself is a dream. So I decided to go along and met Chelle, and of course I fell in love with her. Chelle's yoga teaching was beautiful, balanced, well-rounded, and what I loved about Chelle's vision was that she absolutely catered for the more physically focused asanas, because that isn't a bad practice at all. So when I talk about that, I'm not criticising. But what I absolutely loved was that Chelle honoured the roots of yoga. She always made sure there was yin and yang on for every day on the timetable, and I really respected that because there weren't many people actually honouring that in the community. So of course I loved it, and then I think I'd only been there a couple of weeks, and we sat on was it outside the studio having a coffee or something? I can't remember.
Yeah, in the sunshine.
Yes, it was. Oh yeah, I know. If you can hear a funny noise, by the way, it's absolutely hailing torrentially, and making quite a lot of noise on the roof. So there's no sunshine today. And we just got on, didn't we? We just got on, and it developed from there. I ended up I think I came to the studio every other day or something, and for me, I found a community and I loved it. And then it was Chelle was a massive part of why I became a teacher. So I know I shared that Sharon was part of that as well, but Chelle also played an equally amazing part. And I've been doing your regular restorative classes, haven't I, Chelle? And Chelle, other than Sharon, Chelle was the only person who I'd come across more regularly doing restorative, and it's a really good practice for me, and my body loves it as well. And it was Chelle that actually said, "Oh, I think you'll be a really good restorative yoga teacher." Now, I had never shared any sort of sense that I ever wanted to teach yoga with Chelle. And we laugh now because I remember you saying it felt like I was sent a message. It just came from nowhere. Do you remember?
Yeah.
And what was lovely is that you then became really supportive of my path. You supported me to find the right training that worked for me, and you even offered me a space to teach once I qualified. In fact, not only did you do that, before I officially qualified, you opened up some slots for me to actually do some student teaching, and you even came to some of my classes. And that meant a lot because it built my confidence and gave me a massive opportunity. And then that's where I started officially teaching face-to-face yoga in local. So I have a lot to thank Chelle for. She's a big inspiration to me, very gifted. So I know I'm talking about Chelle in yoga because that's how our paths crossed, but Chelle's also a very talented artist, writer, priestess. The list got, were you a Buddhist monk as well? Buddhist monk?
No, almost. I think I was
almost
kind of
monk,
super close to.
Yeah,
there's
loads of stuff. You're like very qualified, knowledgeable, and full of wisdom and love, and that's what I love about you. So, Chelle's come to join us today because beautiful Chelle has just given birth to a cute girl, and I'm gutted I haven't met her yet because of the situation, because she has got such munchy cheeks. I can't wait to munch her little face and meet her properly. But Orla, if I'm allowed to share her name, Orla, is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
It's too late now because I've said it, but I would have had to try and bleep over it or something. But I am not a mum. For those of you that don't know, I'm not a mum, but I've had lots of experience with children and babies. And I think that motherhood is a massive sacred time, massive challenge, physically, emotionally, and spiritually for women. And I've always really valued and respected that journey. And a few years ago, I remember reading about this tribe, and I'm really sorry, my memory's not good enough to remember the tribe, that used to do, they never called it the fourth trimester, but it was always these rituals they would do to support new mums and take care of them. So, and they would be pampered whilst the baby slept, and they would take the baby off and all that stuff. And I was like, why don't we do that for women? Like, why are we packing women off to fit into size 8 skinny jeans, go out on dates and see all their friends 2 days after giving birth, having photo shoots and going back to work after a couple of... Why are we doing that to women? If you want to do that as a woman and it feels right for you, then there's nothing wrong with that. But so many women, it doesn't feel right for them. They haven't had time to heal through the physical trauma of birth, the emotional side, the lack of sleep. Why are we doing that to our women? And I remember thinking, this is really interesting. And then Chelle, and then thought of it, obviously. And then Chelle started talking about how she was honouring her 4th trimester since giving birth. And I was like, ooh, you're the first person I've heard talk about this. I'm very excited because I know a lot of people who follow me would find this really interesting, because I have a lot of like new mums and busy mums who follow me as well. So I've rabbited on enough because I'm not an expert in this area. I'm going to hand you over to the lovely Chelle, who can tell you a bit more about the 4th trimester and what she's been doing, how she's found it, her journey. And I know you're working on some offerings as well, aren't you, around this? So I'll leave you to go for it.
Well, thank you for such a lovely introduction and for having me as well. So yeah, I think, so to give a bit of, I don't know, context or background to it, I think your point about falling in love with restorative yoga is a really like interesting segue into this, because one of the things that is not really valued anymore in our modern times is rest.
Yeah.
And a lot of the work that I've done up until this point has really been about reclaiming rest and cyclical living. So like that's kind of, before I got pregnant, was like a huge part of the way that I like to live, and then how I like to teach as well. So moon phases, looking at for people that are interested, you know, working with menstrual cycles, working with the seasons, the wheel of the year, all of that stuff.
Moon goddess, you were always my moon goddess. That was what
I love that. So it was interesting to me when I became pregnant and started researching things, and then also I'm very lucky to have an incredible community of women around me from running my women's circles, and they've sort of stayed with me online, so I have this amazing network to plug into. And I got all these wonderful suggestions for books and things to think about, and this 4th trimester kept cropping up, And I was like, this is really interesting, because I hadn't really heard of it either. And then I think it was just before I fell pregnant, I'd actually done a pregnancy yoga teacher training, and it was mentioned there too. So I was like, okay, this is really interesting. So basically, the fourth trimester is this extension of reclaiming rest, and it's exactly how you said. There's this pressure, I think, for women who've just had babies to be back to normal, or to be back to how they were before. And one of the things that I'm really passionate about in my work is honouring rites of passage. And I think that we have really lost that relationship to rites of passage and ceremony and ritual. And as you said, when you look at these kind of ancient cultures, all of that was so deeply rooted in their experiences. And what happens when we don't do that for ourselves is we don't acknowledge that we've been through this incredible transition. And so we just think, oh, I need to get back into my old clothes, I need to do all the things that I did before. And it's very emotionally can be very damaging to a new mom, especially if it's your first time as well. And as you said, I think it's really important to say that there is, of course, like there's so much choice within all of this, and for people that feel like they do want to get back out there, and that is what I would say, like 100% do what feels right for you. And I have lots of friends who are like, actually staying in and resting was not good for my mental health, I needed to get outside. So I think it's really important to say that we'll talk about this and its kind of origins, but there's also that invitation to just always make things your own and listen to yourself and what feels right for you. The other little disclaimer as well is I will try and talk about my experience, but it is not ideal because of COVID. So it would, I had all these plans for this amazing fourth trimester experience, and it's been really hard. I'm not going to lie, because the pandemic's made it incredibly lonely and really difficult to put those things in place. So I will maybe I'll explain what would be lovely. I'll explain how I've tried to do this.
That's great though. It also shows that you can't control everything, and when things happen that are out of your control, you have to learn to let go and accept and still find peace in what is in that time. And that's harder in this day and age than people think it is.
And I think that's really important point as well, because sometimes when we resonate with things like this, is that we can take them to an extreme and not be practical, and then start to feel like we failed because I didn't have that experience, or my fourth trimester doesn't look like all those amazing Instagram pictures. And I think we can sometimes take these beautiful teachings and then use them as a stick to beat ourselves with. And I think it's really important that we navigate how to integrate these things into modern times, and it's not always going to be how it looked like before. As you've said, so the idea with the fourth trimester is to allow the new mom to kind of recover. I mean, giving birth is such a brutal experience. No matter how many hypnobirthing things that you do in the visualization, it's it's something. It's important to, as I said before, I think acknowledge all of the physicality of that. There is a lot that physically needs to recover, and I think that is not talked about very much and shown. And I was really grateful, because before I went to give birth, I'd followed all these very empowering Instagram accounts that are very realistic and show a lot of images of what a woman's body looks like after she's given birth. And the fact that, as well as dressing your baby in nappies, you're also in these gigantic nappies, and there's a lot of blood loss. It's so painful and swollen and all of that stuff.
It's messy. Let's be honest. It's messy, but it's meant to be messy. But for some reason, we're shamed that that's not okay. As women, it's like periods. They're messy. They're not as messy as birth. I'm not naive, but they're still messy, and women are still shamed for having periods.
And I don't think it happens,
isn't it?
And I don't think it helps that sometimes we see, you know, these public figures who've had a baby and then like 5 minutes later they're, you know, like this with a beautiful
I'm off
outfit.
for a ball. I'm off to have a
Really?
ball. Yeah. I think it's because no one sees what's happened behind the scenes. So there's a massive difference to a woman that's just spent, I know, 24 hours giving birth through the night with no sleep, literally, and then you don't know how that birthing experiences was. So somebody going in and having a 2-hour labour in the middle of the day, hasn't lost a night's sleep already, isn't already behind. They are going to feel different. And I'm not going to say they've had it easier, because some haven't. Some quicker births can be more traumatic. They're just different. They're just, if you've already lost a night's sleep through your labour before you've even done the sleepless nights, you're already behind.
Yeah.
To somebody who's gone into labour through the day and hasn't missed out on any sleep yet. And people don't think about that. They just see something and go, well, she's done that, so you need to do that as well, or I need to do that as well. It's like,
It's so true. And I personally hadn't put those two things together, thinking about it for myself, because I'd been up all night already. I had to be induced.
Yeah.
Then had to have surgery, and then had Orla on my own in hospital, because we could only come for such short times because of COVID. And I was like, oh, this is how you start. Like, you start sleep deprived. And I'm like, oh, I just hadn't put those two things together. Yeah, so you're sort of starting out exhausted, perhaps a little bit traumatized. That was definitely my experience, because things that didn't go to plan, and giving birth on like in a pandemic, had to do so much of it on my own. So yeah, all of that to say that the fourth trimester is trying to really respect that, to go, this is a huge deal. Your body needs to recover. You need to emotionally process what's happened, and you need to bond with your baby. And a huge part of you know, a woman's mental health after birth is about that bond, and trying not to feel anxious and stressed. And it's very, very difficult to create that sort of cocoon for yourself if you're expected to entertain people, take the baby out, get back in, as you said, get back into your fitness clothes and be exercising and all of that stuff. So I read this amazing book called The First 40 Days, which I found so moving and inspiring, because it talks a lot about the history of the fourth trimester, talks a lot about the author's relationship with her sort of friends and family when she had a baby, and how they helped. And then it's also just got some really beautiful recipes and things to help you create that space. But one of the things that really sort of struck me was all of this this like nurturing, nourishing support that she was describing. And the other thing to say as well, forget about the pandemic, but sometimes we might not have the privilege to have that. Like, I know that there's a lot of people who are like, I'm not going to be able to have family come and live with me. Or
I totally agree with you there. Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I've been sort of saying to myself is, because of the pandemic, I haven't been able to have that. But I'm like, what can I do then? You know, instead of thinking what can't I have, thinking about what can I do. And what I could do was not put pressure on myself to be outside and have pictures with the pram, you know, which you see a lot, like, hello, I'm trying not to wet myself. That was like, that I can control. So, you know, prioritize rest. And the other thing is ask for what you need. That was a big thing for me, because I personally struggle with that. I like to try and do a lot myself and very independent. And suddenly I was like, I actually can't physically move very well. Like, I was in so much pain. I'd had surgery, stitches and all of these things. And so I was really honest with my husband about what I needed and what was going on in my body. And I mean, he's used to me talking about, you know, like, I offer my menstrual blood to to the earth, and he's used to me like watering the plants in the garden and things like that. So he's quite on board with my ways. And it was really lovely, because I talked to him about the first trimester, and he was like, this makes a lot of sense. He's been really like he's practiced martial arts for a long time, and a lot of the philosophies around Chinese medicine, you know, he's really on board with. So he was like, makes perfect sense to me. So we read that book together. I shared things with him, and I was like, this is what I need for like the 2 weeks that you're off work, because he only had 2 weeks off.
Yeah.
I kind of need you to do everything so I can rest. And it was very difficult for me to say that. My dad gave me a lot of shit for for doing. He's like, Richard's doing everything. I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
I've just pushed a human out of my.
They do get shit, don't they? For whatever the reason, if their partner's a man, steps in to actually take all the load off for a week or so, women get shit for it.
Yeah, and I just
it's like
my dad and fine.
It's not only your dad. I have seen other people do it as well.
But again, I like that's one thing again that I could do. You know, it's like I can tune that out and be like, this is a conversation we've had, and this is what's right for us. So that's what we did, and it also gave him the chance to have a bond with Orla.
Yeah, that's so lovely. Yeah.
And it means that, like today, for example, she's up in his music studio with him, and she's happy to be with either of us.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's not always the case. Whatever you try, sometimes babies just won't do that. But it's really worked for us, because I'm like, it's given me a little bit of time in the day where I can have stuff for myself, or I can work or whatever. So yeah, asking for what you need. And the other thing was asking for food. So that was the other big thing, that, and again, difficult thing to ask for, but we just said to both of our moms, would you be happy to cook? And they loved it, and they made us all food, and we had it in the freezer. And I was so grateful for that, because it was like nourishing food made with love that we were both eating. Because he, you know, that's the thing, like, he was exhausted as well, he was emotional as well. It was a rite of passage for him too. And I think having that like bubble of love and support around us meant that we could transition together and focus on Orla in that bond, rather than us both being completely like beside ourselves and then being like, who's going to cook, and you know, So those are the things that helped me, that I thought I can ask for these things and I can do these things, and prioritizing rest and trying not to feel guilty about that. And the other really interesting thing that was in the book was about not getting cold as well. So she talked a lot about you know, wrapping up warm and not going outside and letting the cold and the damp get into your body, which I thought was really interesting, because after you've had the baby, you're cold. Like, there's an emptiness to the body that I'd read about, and then it was really interesting to actually experience it for myself, because by the end of it, I was overdue by 2 weeks as well, so I was huge, and like always had this like red face, so like blood pumping through the body. I was so hot all the time, and then suddenly that person that's been in your body for this almost 10 months is outside, and your body feels cold and empty. And I found that really interesting as well, and that's what led me to then want to go and train in this sacred postpartum amazing course, where you're basically learning how to blend like warming oils and herbs that you rub onto your belly.
Oh, and then that's lovely.
And then you wrap your belly. There's like a sacred way of wrapping your tummy. And this is not for an aesthetic thing. I think sometimes people see this and it's a bit confusing with the wraps, that it looks like you're trying to kind of suck your body in for an aesthetic reason. It's not for that. It's to keep that heat in and to help like the abdominal muscles knit back together. And but also this idea of closing your body back. This is what the 4th trimester is, because you're so open after you've given birth for lots of reasons.
Yeah, I was going to say more than one.
Like, and a lot of these rituals and rites of passage are about closing the body back. So, and again, this wasn't something I could go and get from anybody else, because, well, one, I don't think there's anybody around here I knew about that does it anyway. And even if there was, I couldn't see them. So again, I just thought I can do this for myself. It's not the same, but I'll be priestess to myself. So I got the oils, I did the belly wrap, and there's these like beautiful prayers and things about kind of closing the body back. And then when I finish my 4th trimester, I'm going to try, if I can, to create this bathing ritual that you do that sort of cleanses you after that time in a really beautiful way, and honors you coming out of that time. So yeah, I think this, at the heart of it really, is that sense of rite of passage, honoring that you're not the same person that you were. It's not just about like what you used to do and fitting into clothes and all of that, but like you have changed. And then from a self-care point of view, health point of view, that rest is so important, you know. And from the other work that I do in like sports massage as well, I see a lot of people with pelvic floor issues, pelvic floor damage, and I think a lot of that damage is done potentially from this time. If you know, these people that have had babies and then they've rushed back out there, or to do exercise, or as I said, to kind of be seen out with the pram or whatever, a lot of that damage can be done at that point because we've tried to bounce back too quickly or whatever it is. So I've been really conscious of that as well from an anatomy point of view, that rest is so important, and we see this in all of these cyclical teachings. So yeah, have I described that okay?
Oh, it's brilliant. Yeah, no, I've loved it. I loved it. It was nice to hear your experience. And, you know, it must have been harder going through it with COVID. I can imagine there are pluses to that as well, as in the fact that you didn't have all the visitors that you would, so you were able to honour that. But on the flip side, the isolation is a bit more as well, because everything's about balance. I suppose because of COVID again, you weren't running the studio. You didn't have the pressure to get back to the studio, so you were able to, you know, but I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? Some women have pressure to go back to work after a couple of weeks. Some women don't have the partner who wants to pull any weight at all, or a partner at all. So it really isn't black and white for everybody, but like anything in life, whatever that is, there are always small segments or parts of it that you can use and adapt to yourself and your own situation. Because I can imagine if you had an abundance of financial wealth, you could really go all out for the 4th trimester. You could have a reflexologist in and a masseuse every day if we weren't under COVID. Do you know what I mean? There's so many things you could do, but we're all very different. We've all got different resources, whether that's financial or support or friends or family or isolation or whatever it is. And it's all it is with any of this is just picking what works for you, where you're at, and being okay with that, as in accepting that and finding gratitude in that, and focusing, like you said, what you can do and not focusing on what you can't do. So,
and I think say again.
You explained it well.
And I think as well, just to add into that, I think with these things, like you said, like you know, people are coming at this from so many different backgrounds, what's available. But I think having the 4th trimester as a state of mind is a really important thing. Where you're like,
definitely.
I'm not going to be able to have that village experience where I have all these people come and live with me, or I can go and live with someone else, or, you know, maybe we do, maybe we don't. But I think a big thing with the modern day is to have an awareness of it, because I think so many people don't even know that is what is a really nice thing to do at that time. Like try and rest, try and stay warm, eat well, ask for help where you can. And I think just having an awareness of it and having it as a mental state helps so much, you know, whether or not you can have all the other aspects to it. Because you're right, I mean, you could totally, you know, if you had that at your disposal to be able to book like therapists to come in and massage you.
I know it, but you could focus on the fact that, well, I can't afford to have all those therapists every day, so I'm just not going to do it, and I'm going to moan at the people that can. Or you can focus on the fact that it is a state of mind, and I'll be grateful for whatever it is within that I can do, and that's what's most important. I think this message is really important. I think it's really important for women that have just given birth to have that mindset and really look at the 4th trimester. I mean, I don't know if there's been any scientific or evidence-based research on this. I have no idea, and I don't know if you do either. But, you know, postnatal depression is probably more heightened because we talk about it more and women don't have to hide anymore, which is really positive. But do you think potentially, and this is probably just our opinion because I don't think there's any evidence yet, but the 4th trimester could probably help reduce postnatal depression because you're actually resting and healing and asking for help and all that stuff as well?
Yeah, I mean, again, like you, I don't feel like I know enough about it yet. I'm really interested to, would like to look at some more research. Some of my friends are midwives and doulas, and I'd like to talk to them about
really
it.
Interesting, yeah.
From my own experience,
yeah,
which is all I can go off really at the moment, I would say yes, like definitely. But as I said before, people are so different. Like one of my friends had said for her mental health, she needed to get outside.
Yes, definitely, yeah. We're all so different. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I really don't. Like, I want to stay in the warm. I don't want to go outside. But that's, you know, I'm like that anyway. I'm a Taurus. I'm always like, I'll stay in, thanks. It's just what I'm like anyway.
Isn't it? The 4th trimester really is about honouring what you need for yourself to bring that 4th trimester. Yes. And if it is fresh air and getting out, and it's not because you feel under pressure to perform for whatever reason, and it genuinely is best for your mental health, then that is the main thing, and it's honouring the mindset.
Yeah, I think it's that ability to say, have a conversation with yourself and say, what do I need? And then how can I ask for that? And I think sometimes there's this pressure for new moms to look like they've got it all together.
Yeah, I think it's really cruel, and I've always thought it's really cruel. And I'm not a mum. People just automatically assume that women without children have no idea what this is like. And any woman that loves women knows the pressures that women are under. Because you don't always have had to go through the experience to respect and honour someone else. Because you could go through the same experience and still have different outcomes. So I've always thought it's cruel for women to be under that much pressure after giving birth to do so much and look so much. I've never thought it's been the right thing to do.
But I think when you look at, you know, the work of a soul midwife as well, and the work that you do, and I think that it's not just about pregnancy and postpartum care. We miss these rites of passage for all aspects of life. We almost give people a time limit on their grief. You know, we give ourselves a time limit on grief. We're like, oh, you should really have your shit together now. You know, and we don't allow space and time around these really important transitions. Whether that's a girl that's just started bleeding for the first time, where are the rites of passage around that? You know, that should be honoured. But it's not, it's all hidden away. And you know, there's a lot of the incredible practices around death and things that we would have done for the deceased and the dying, they've been lost too. And I know that there's a movement to bring these back.
You want to bring them back, Chelle?
I know, bring them back. I was listening to an interview recently with an Irish woman, and she was saying, you know, the women that were the midwives were also the women that would do the keening at the funerals. They were midwives at birth, but they were also midwives at death. And I found that so interesting. So I think a lot of this 4th trimester stuff, we can take that and apply it to lots of other things, like how do we honour winter? How do we honour the darkest time of the moon cycle? This weekend is the dark moon. I'm exhausted. I don't really want to do very much. I don't feel very social. I'm really learning to embrace and honour that. Same in terms of the menstrual cycle as well. Like, how often do people that menstruate feel like they're not allowed to honour that? They just have to get on with things that they normally get on with. Because
I use that the 4th trimester is a really good analogy, although it's not the same. It's similar mindset to living with chronic health, disability, invisible disability, etc. The only difference really is there aren't as many people around to want to help you or come and help you or cook for you, whatever that is, because it's a long-term thing and there's no joy in it. But there's a joy in a baby. There's a new baby in the family. It's gorgeous, it's cute, and everyone wants to help because there's joy and there's fun, and it's a different mindset of support. But the mindset and the principles are the same when you're honouring chronic health.
Yeah.
Just there's not as much out there for help in terms of people willing to come and do that stuff. And that sounds negative, but it's just a fact. It's just what it is, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's just that interesting awareness around it. And I think what's really helpful and what I've been really grateful for is just people talking about this stuff, because had people not talked about it, I wouldn't have known about it. It's made a huge difference for me. In terms of feeling like this is a sacred time. You know, and every time these little thoughts come in about, oh, you should be doing this and you should be doing that, and you know, you need to get back into shape or whatever. I mean, I was never really in shape anyway, but I've never gone to the gym in my life. But it's been really helpful when any of that's kind of come into my mind to just be like, no, this is a sacred time, you know.
And it is. And you're doing amazing. And thank you for sharing it all with us.
That's all right. It's been lovely. As I said, I hope it makes sense, because at the moment I'm so tired.
It really makes perfect sense. No baby brain here. No baby brain here, love. You've done really well. Before we go, if people do want to, when you've written your course and they want to know more, where can they reach out to you? Is that your which sort of, where do they reach out?
Yeah, so the plan is, I mean, at the moment I'm kind of in my 4th trimester, so I'm not doing a great
I feel honoured that you've even agreed to this chat.
So my intention eventually, and again this is COVID dependent too, is to be able to offer these as a service, really. So for women to have the opportunity to have a postpartum ceremony. So you'd have friends there or your family, and there's like beautiful prayers and rituals, and then you actually do the belly binding and all of this gorgeous stuff. So that's kind of the plan, probably in the next kind of year or so, depending on how things pan out. So yeah, at the moment I've got a little bit about it on my website. It says coming soon.
Okay. Which website?
That is the Michelle Rose Boxley
one. Okay, fab. I'll pop it in the comments below then, so people can go and make sure they keep in touch with you if they're interested.
And the other thing I would recommend is, just before I go, I've just finished reading a book called The Red Tent.
Oh yes,
and it was just such a deeply moving and inspiring book. So yeah, if anybody wants something to read, the first 40 days I'd recommend, and The Red Tent, because it has a lot of those rituals and ceremonies in the story, and it's really
okay. Well, good recommendations, thank you. Thank you, love, and thanks to everyone for watching, and have a good month.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Bye.
You're welcome. Bye.